this clip, we started out one way talking about a part of what's going on in Israel, but then we dive into this part here where I want to start with you with, and I'm just going to play maybe about 70 seconds of this and then kind of begin the conversation on a regional war in the Middle East.
DoD had to hunt for funds. That means less money for training, exercises, and deployments the military had already planned for the year. Some contractual payments could be delayed, Sherwood said. The buildup in the Middle East, which has included extending the deployment of the Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group operating off the coast of Israel, has therefore forced the military departments and U.S. Central Command to reassess the requirements for current and future operations based on the developing conflict, he said. And quote, that's from your reporting, Lara. So what's the bottom line here? What is the Pentagon asking for?
So the bottom line here is that the Pentagon really has a money problem right now. It's supporting wars on two fronts, in Ukraine and in Israel. And crucially, in Israel, it's sent so much firepower to the region, 2 additional aircraft carriers, additional fighter jets, additional troops, hundreds of troops. And it doesn't actually have the money to pay for that right now. As you said, the government is under a continuing resolution. That's a stopgap spending measure that freezes funding at last year's spending levels. So the fact that these movements weren't planned means that the Pentagon has had to pull that funding from elsewhere in the department. Now, the Pentagon is no stranger, of course, to operating under a continuing resolution. Unfortunately, this does happen almost every year, but now is just a particularly bad time for this to happen, with so much going on, so much on the Pentagon's plate, and it could get worse. If congressional dysfunction, this impasse lasts into April, all of the federal departments, including the Pentagon, are going to face another cut, a 1% across the board funding cut. And so there's going to be even less money for that. I should also say that there's so much happening right now that all these troops are under threat in the Middle East. We just saw on Sunday that there were 2 ballistic missiles that were shot by Houthi rebels close to the USS Mason, a guided missile destroyer that's operating there in the Gulf of Aden. There's been 73 attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria since October 17th. So clearly U.S. troops are putting themselves in harm's way, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any resolution to this conflict anytime soon.
So, Scott, you hear that, and I mean, it sounds like a pretty dire situation for Israel and the U.S., quite frankly. And I must, just as a lay person that would be watching this, what is the U.S. thinking? Like, what are we getting ourselves into, spreading ourselves this thin? It doesn't seem like a real plan or a real, set goals of achieving. But what is your take on all of that you heard there in that clip?
Well, first of all, let's start off by the fact that the defense budget is in the vicinity of $800 billion a year. That's a lot of money. Right. So let's stop talking about running out of money, okay? The Pentagon gets an awful lot of money. The other thing that nobody's talking about is the Pentagon has failed its 6th consecutive audit. The Pentagon has assets of around $3.3 trillion. It can't account for 65% of them. They don't know where it is. Now, obviously, some of this stuff exists and all that, but the last thing we need to do to solve the Pentagon's problems is throw more money at it. I'm just being straight up honest here. The other thing you have to realize is, even with all this military deployment that we have, it doesn't make a difference, because the Pentagon today can't win a war against a major opponent. All the money that we put into it, all the investment and such. Let's look at Ukraine right now. And we're going bankrupt supplying Ukraine with our money, our equipment. We've deployed 100,000 troops to Europe. We're talking about beefing up NATO forces. And we're just going flat broke. We're running out of stuff to give them. We can't produce enough artillery ammunition to sustain the operations. Meanwhile, Russia, on the other hand, This past year has mobilized 600,000 troops to fight in the special military operation. They've also mobilized an additional 600,000 troops to expand their military from 900,000 to 1.5 million. Why? Because they want to invade? No, because we're expanding NATO. We're expanding NATO. We're inviting Finland and Sweden in there. That means that Russia now has to create new military districts and create new forces to man these military districts to protect themselves. We have a posture that says we're going to threaten the Arctic. So Russia has to build new forces to protect the Arctic. We're working with the Japanese and the Koreans to threaten the Russians in the Pacific. So they have to deploy forces there. But what I'm trying to say is that Russia's not having the same problem we're having. Russia's generated all these new troops, and they're winning a war in Ukraine right now. Even the mainstream media can't ignore that fact anymore. I don't think there's any mainstream media outlet that's saying, oh, no, Ukraine's secretly winning. Nope, they're losing. Everybody acknowledges this. Russia's has no ammunition shortage. Their defense industry has adapted in the time period to produce not only the artillery munitions, but the tanks, the armored vehicles, the artillery systems, new systems. Drone warfare is a whole new thing that's taking place right now. The Russians have reinvented drone warfare. Americans still are out there flying little plywood drones, or we're flying big, MQ-9 Reapers that'll get shot down in a real war. Russia's out there doing the real stuff, the way war's supposed to be fought. And yet here we are talking about we need more money to send another carrier battle group to the region. What's the carrier battle group going to do? Israel has a very large air force. They American-made aircraft. They drop American-made bombs by pilots who are trained to American standards. So they've bombed Gaza into smithereens. Are more American airplanes and bombs going to change that outcome? Nope. Hezbollah has gone to war against Israel in the past and been bombed by Israel and beat Israel. Our American plane, our American, here's the other thing, guys. What have we done for the last 20 years? American pilots are very good at taking off, flying through uncontested airspace, meaning no enemy air defense whatsoever, no enemy aircraft trying to shoot them down, and dropping bombs on Afghan wedding parties or Iraqi villages. That's what we're expert at doing. Killing innocent civilians. And I hate to be too acrimonious here, but come on, guys, we've killed so many innocent people over the course of the last 20 years, and we've lost. I mean, my God, we got beat by the Taliban. We got beat by the Taliban. Okay. This vast military got beat by the Taliban. We got beat in Iraq. We didn't win that war. We haven't won a war lately because we don't know how to win a war. What we're good at is spending money. We have a military system, a military industrial complex combined with a military structure. Let's not cut them. The generals are as much to blame as the industrialists because they've built this edifice that doesn't work. I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump, but I relish the day that he called General Mattis and his generals together about Afghanistan and said, you guys suck. You don't know how to win wars because you told me you just needed more troops, more bombs, more this and that, and things are going to happen, and nothing happened. You suck. We're out of there. And I'm like, wow, an American president that actually realizes the military is lying to him and that they do suck and they don't know how to fight. And maybe we need to get new generals. Maybe we need to learn how to take junior officers and imbue them with a sense of responsibility, duty, and honor. And as they progress through the ranks, not allow the reality of the corruption of the system to corrupt them. So that when you become a general, you're playing the game as opposed to doing what you're supposed to be doing to protect our nation. Maybe then we might have a military that actually can go forth, close with, and destroy the enemy through firepower maneuver. But we can't do that right now. If we fought the Russians, they would whip us, hands down, whip us. If we fought the Chinese, be a no-brainer. That's like Pop Warner going up against the NFL, baby. It ain't going to happen. Even fighting these insurgents, if we fought the Iranians, they'll beat us. We can't win a major war right now because we have all this money we spend. But like I told you in the audit, 65% of it, they don't know what happened to it. They don't know where it is. I mean, look at how we got, and there's a game being played here. This is why I call it corruption. It's not just incompetence, it's corruption. Congress said, we don't have any money to give to Ukraine. So what did the Pentagon do? Oh, we made an accounting error. And suddenly we have hundreds of millions of dollars of stuff available. We just found it. It's here. Let's give it to the Ukrainians. And we don't need congressional approval. They lie, they lie, they lie, they lie. That's the bottom line. They lie. Now, I would like the U.S. Congress to function the way it's supposed to. I would like the U.S. Congress to pass budgets when they're supposed to. I would like the United States of America to function the way the Constitution envisioned. And if I were in the military, I certainly would appreciate not operating off for one continuing resolution after another, because you can't do any long-term budget planning. It's actually more expensive the way, because right now when we buy weaponry, when we purchase things for the military, we're paying top dollar because we can't program it down the thing. So it's just wasteful all over. You would get fired from any job you had if you behaved in your employment the way the military behaves, if you handled money the way the military handles money, if you lost things the way the U.S. military, if you're supposed to produce Porsches and I come to buy the Porsche and I can't, it doesn't turn, the tire's flat, the wheel falls off. You haven't produced a Porsche, you produce a piece of junk. The U.S. military is supposed to produce the finest combat force on the face of the earth. We're Americans. I mean, I know I'm becoming that little ugly hubris-filled American, but my God, we're Americans. We're supposed to be better than this. We're supposed to be good, and we're not. We're not, and they're spending all the money. There's people in Flint, Michigan right now that still drink crap water. Imagine what they could have done with some of this money. Right here in Albany, New York, I got homeless people. It's 16 degrees at night. Homeless people, people with drug addictions, alcoholism, mental health problems. Nobody's taking care of them. Nobody cares about them. We have a country that needs fixing. We have a country that has a whole bunch of problems. And we're instead taking all this money, throwing it into a military that's dysfunctional. Ladies and gentlemen, they failed 6 consecutive audits. 6. Yeah. They don't know where trillions of dollars of stuff is. It's gone. That's our money they took. Our money. Why don't we get angry? Why don't we get furious? Why do we have to sit here and listen to this garbage reporting about how the Pentagon's out of money? Well, then park the damn carrier. If my kid comes to me and said, "Dad, I want to borrow the car," I say, "Okay, but you got to put gas in it." And they call me from the way and say, "Ran out of gas." I said, "That's your problem. Park the car, walking. All right, you should have planned it a little bit better."
That's a great analogy.
Put an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, but we're out of money. Park it, baby. Park it. That's reality. That's the way the world works. But don't sit here and tell me you need more money. Not when there's so much stuff going on in this country that needs money. Real Americans need this. And what are we doing this for? We're supporting Israel that's carrying out genocide.